This is the morning brief from the Economic Times.
It's been 9 months now since the Tata Group took over Air India.
It is now official. Tata Sons have won the bid to acquire debt-ridden Air India from Government of India. This acquisition marks the return of Air India to the Tata fold after 68 years.
In the last 9 months, a lot has happened. Journalists like myself, who earlier blurbed Tata as a salt to software conglomerate, replaced it with aviation to automobile group. What else? Well, the Indian aviation industry, like its global peers, began to shrug off the woes of the COVID-19 pandemic. People began to travel more, ticket prices began to rise, and 2 new Indian airlines, a passenger airline and a cargo carrier, started operations. At Air India too, changes have happened. Its flights have become more punctual than they were in the last 5 years. And this is government data. The airline is adding aircraft to its fleet also after 5 years. It's recruiting people aside of pilots and crew for the first time in 16 years. And it plans to place a massive aircraft order also for the first time in 16 years. Digitization is happening, expensive contracts are being reworked, planes are being refurbished, staff is being retrained. There are plans being drawn to integrate Tata's 4 airlines to form a big, formidable, world-class airline entity. The Tatas are spending billions of dollars in reviving the Maharaja. I wrote on Saturday that it'll raise 15,000 crore rupees of debt to pump into the airline in the next couple of years. But of course, many challenges remain. Has Air India improved its overall customer perception from the rock-bottom levels that it reached in the last 2 decades? Not really. Has customer service improved? Not considerably. Are several planes still grounded? Do the ones still flying have broken seats and in-flight entertainment screens? Oh yes and yes. Are loss-making routes being cut? No. Is Air India still overstaffed? Perhaps. So, where does India's oldest airline stand now? And what are the challenges and advantages ahead for its owners? What are they doing right? What are the things they should have done yesterday? And what should they do tomorrow? All this and more in today's episode. It's the 1st of November. I'm your host Anirban Chowdhury, and today we take stock of how much the Tata Group has progressed in its planned revival of Air India. With us in this episode will be the airline's very positive CEO, Campbell Wilson himself.
You see the potential for this airline to be so much bigger and so much better. We just need to keep saying that this is not a T20. This is a test match.
And my fellow ET aviation reporter, Arindam Majumder. We also have Mayur Patel, the regional director of UK-based travel data and analytics firm OAG. Mayur has been tracking airlines in this region for decades. Do listen on. This is the Morning Brief. Let's start with excerpts from Arindam's recent interview with Campbell Wilson. A global aviation veteran, Wilson was with Singapore Airlines for 15 years. He's in fact credited with conceptualizing and founding SIA's flamboyant and funky low-cost airline unit, Scoot. Wilson was Scoot's CEO for 2 years before coming to Air India. Here's the interview.
Okay, I think we have a clean environment now. Good to go.
Yeah. So it's been around 3 months that you have taken charge of Air India. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced till now?
The challenge really has manyfold. It's hard to put 3 on it. One is that over many years, the airline has not had the investment that it ideally had. And so there's a lot of investment in, obviously, aircraft, in customer-facing systems, be it on board the aircraft or in terms of IT interfaces. There's a lot of accumulated, grievances is probably the word. We had many thousands, tens of thousands of refunds that had not been processed, which we've now done. In fact, we're publicly inviting people to send historical cases that they feel might not have been addressed so that we can do it once and for all. Yes, I think we processed so far in the last few months about 2.5 lakh worth, I think, 150 crore. Investing in call center systems, investing in restoring seats and IFE systems, improving website and mobile app, making sure that there's more people in the call center, getting our own staff into the airports to coordinate and supervise and uplift the people representing us on the front line, investing in crew so they can be cross-trained on narrow body and wide body aircraft. We need everyone up to speed, focused, capable, equipped, and pulling in the same direction.
But yeah, definitely there have been a lot of achievements, like a marked improvement in the on-time performance.
There's many things that we can point to that have been done. I spoke about cleaning up the aircrafts, new seats, new cushions, new curtains, new carpets, rolling out new menus, domestic business class, which will be followed on other routes. Punctuality, we started the year in April at number 6 domestically. Provisional figures I've seen for September indicate that we were number 1. If we weren't number 1, we were very close, number 2. And we went back as far as 2014, and Air India has not been number 1 in any month since 2014. So these are indications that the airline is making significant steps forward. And some things will be quick, some things are easy, but many things are long and hard.
So Campbell, in your view, turning around Air India is as much about the little things as the big ones, if I have understood correctly the perspective that you have given.
In our view, the financial turnaround is a consequence of that. Clearly, there's many historic contracts that we can renegotiate and have renegotiated, but much of the turnaround will come by seeing the consequence of the investment in these foundational things. It's tempting when you look at any business, but particularly in an airline, because it is mass transportation that touches a lot of people at a lot of touch points. It's tempting to look at the symptoms and say, just fix the symptoms. Right. But actually, oftentimes the cause of what people experience is much, much deeper. Yeah. I'm from New Zealand. We also, cricket is a passion of ours too. We just need to keep saying that this is not a T20. This is a test match. It's going to take not 5 days, 5 years. It is going to require lots of 1s and 2s and patience and tenacity. And the occasional 4 and the 6 will be hit. But really getting to that century is going to be a lot of 1s and 2s and accumulation and just doing that foundation.
Who could have understood it better than you? New Zealand are the current reigning world test champions.
I wasn't going to mention that because there was a team that we played in the final, but then the New Zealand team came to India and got utterly thrashed.
So Campbell, I was just trying to understand about this. You stressed on the word pride a number of times. How critical is it to restore the pride and this quantum of glory in the brand Air India?
I think that's certainly one of the objectives. We do want people to be proud of Air India and feel that it represents. They start flying. Yes, but also we want to appeal not just to Indians. We want people to see Air India in the same category as the Qatars and the Emirates and the Singapores of the world.
Very interesting that you mentioned Emirates and Singapore Airlines. I'd just like to know here, in this context, what are your plans for the international expansion of Air India? Because Emirates and Singapore Airlines are known for their international and the hub and spoke operations that they operate across the world.
It's not appropriate for me to give specifics, but I can give you big picture objectives. We rolled out our Vihan.ai transformation roadmap, which is a 5-year roadmap. Part of that process is expanding fleet and expanding market share and obviously network. And so the present fleet, depending how you count active and non-active aircraft, is around 120-ish. We've acknowledged that we want to increase the fleet by about 3 times in the 5-year period. And we want to increase market share both domestically and internationally to about 30%. And so I think you can take from that that's going to be achieved through network density, so increasing flights on existing city pairs, but also then expanding the footprint to new city pairs.
Just would like to add, what would be your focus areas in terms of new international geographies?
I think it's no secret that there's a huge market between North America and India, also between Greater Europe and India. Australasia, Southeast Asia are underserved. So those are the geographies that we're going to be looking at first. But there is the opportunity to be connected far, far more than is presently the case.
Just give us a broad-based idea about your fleet expansion plans. You have leased 5 Boeing 777-200 and 25 Airbus 320 and 321. And you plan to shortly give a very big order size. As you said, you have an aim to triple the order size in next 5 years to at least up to 350 aircraft. Can you please elaborate further at the kind of aircraft, at the range, at the layout pattern you are looking at?
So I won't get into the specifics of aircraft type. More broadly, the last 6 months and the next couple of months is going to be focused on, or has been focused on, getting grounded aircraft into the sky. We've restored, I think, about 17 wide bodies and narrow bodies so far, and we've used that to expand the footprint. That process will continue until early next year once all of the aircraft are back up and flying. In the immediate term, aside from that, we're leasing an aircraft. We have 5 777LRs which are coming in, servicing the North American market starting from December, as well as 25 narrow-body aircraft which are coming in to augment the domestic short-haul fleet. Then over the course of next year, we're in discussions to bring in more aircraft, both wide and narrow-body. And then we're also in discussions with the OEMs for a significant order of new aircraft for delivery after 2023, which then allows for the subsequent acceleration. So the exact configuration obviously is still subject to finalization. We're negotiating away. Hopefully we can let you know in the next few months.
So Campbell, right now, beside Air India, you are part of a group which owns 3 other airline brands. So what is going to be your brand positioning? Will you have a low-cost offering and also a full-service offering, or you are going to focus only on a particular segment?
No. There's huge potential and opportunity in both. The evidence is quite clear that India does have space for a significant low-cost player. And so, the Air India group will have a low-cost proposition. It will also have a full-service proposition. The exact capacity share between the two, we have some views on this. We continue to refine those views. But I think you will see between Air India and Air India Express, both brands operating in the domestic market. And so whatever corporate structure that we ultimately announce will quite clearly signal that there's no sort of parent-child relationship. They're sovereign businesses that are operating to maximize their market presence, their economic performance, but they will be coordinated in a way that supports the greater group ambitions.
You have a target to reach 30% market share. Because of asking probably a strategic plan, does that include Vistara too?
I think the ambition is for Air India Group. Right. And whatever Air India Group includes in the future, that's for the future to tell. As I say, there's many ways of getting to 30%. One way is acquire aircraft. The other way is to acquire companies.
Do you mean Vistara is going to be acquired by Air India?
That's your words, not mine. I think all I know is what was published by Singapore Airlines to the stock exchange, that they are in talks with Tata being the shareholder of Air India. Right. What happens will be something the future tells.
So in terms of strategy, there's a peculiar scenario now. You were dependent on 2 companies for 2 of your core function, engineering and ground handling. But those companies are not under your control. Like for engineering, you're dependent on Air India Engineering Services. And for ground handling, you are dependent on Air India Transport Services Limited. So looking at that, are you looking to buy those out when the government offers them? Or are you looking to develop internal capabilities?
Well, we have to build capabilities. Previously, Air India's entire engineering capability was with Air India Engineering Services Limited. So it's just a matter of prudence, but also a necessity for us to start building our internal maintenance and engineering capabilities. So we've been doing that quite aggressively over the last 5 or 6 months, quite a significant team now. AIESL has done a fantastic job getting some of our aircraft back into the air. They're a very important partner. We want them to transform and improve just as we transform and improve. It's going to be necessary for us both.
In terms of reining in cost, which is also an equal aspect along with revenue to build profitability, what are you doing about it? A lot of your contracts with suppliers, vendors, and for aircraft maintenance are very, very costly. So what are the steps you have taken to rein in the costs?
Many contracts have been renegotiated, whether it's fuel, insurance, new aircraft coming in that are going to have a more efficient operating cost, many systems that are coming into play in order to both increase efficiency from an operating cost perspective, plans many other things, but also from revenue management, sales and distribution capabilities, bringing in more revenue in the top line. Fundamentally, the airline business is about unit cost. As we start expanding, we start expanding such that the fixed cost base that we currently have is being spread over a much larger number of flying seats. Again, because the company has been static, if not shrinking, there's been a fixed cost base which has been less able to be supported by the aircraft that are flying. So there's a trajectory to recovery for sure.
Campbell Wilson remembers that as a young man in his 20s, he had taken Air India flights a couple of times between London and New York. He remembers them being Boeing 747s. And he remembers being fascinated by the service and food on board. Little did he know that close to 3 decades later, he'd be given the really prestigious, really difficult task of reviving Air India. Wilson is, like a good opening batsman in cricket, off to a solid start. Air India is growing after years. It's recruiting 250 cabin crew a month and 100 pilots every quarter. The Tata Group is also exploiting its IT expertise, bringing in leaders from TCS to revamp everything from its customer relations management to its resource planning. Certain things, of course, are beyond its control. Well, you can't refurbish planes with new seats and screens when supply chains across the world are heavily disrupted. Some things, perhaps, it should have accelerated, like cutting loss-making routes, speeding up integration between its 4 airlines, revving up its loyalty program. I wanted to discuss and analyze all this in a little more detail. Have a little debrief after the interview if you like, with Mayur and Arindam. So I asked Mayur the same question that Arindam had asked Wilson. What are the top challenges facing Air India?
I think the top 3 challenges, if you look at it from a broader spectrum, one is the refurbishing of its fleet. So if you look at Twitter, they've been getting lots of negative feedback from customers. But as you can see with the supply management, if you order TV screens, TV monitors for the in-flight entertainment system, it does take time. So I think Air India management has set a time frame for that. So within the next 12 months, you will see a lot of these refurbishments being done on the wide-body aircraft. And these are the most lucrative yield generators for Air India on the long haul. So getting that whole aircraft refurbishment is key in terms of its yield management and the ability for Air India to charge a premium moving forward. If you look at Air India's distribution, it's got a lot of gaps in there. I'll give you an example. If you look at the website and if you search for a flexi economy between Delhi and Mumbai sector using the same fare family and schedule for both Air India and Vistara, you will see a disparity for the business travel segment where Air India is charging 38,000 versus Vistara with a 17,000 rupee range, right? So there's a big gap. So that will deter people from booking Air India on a flexi ticket. They will go to Vistara, which has free cancellation or free changes to the flights and so forth. Whereas on Air India's side, they actually require you to pay a fee just to change a flight on a flexi ticket. So a lot of that realignment will need to be done in order to attract the business traffic into the Air India side of the business. The other bit is loyalty program. If you have a robust loyalty program, people will come back on a repeat basis. So I think better alignment of the frequent flyer to its loyalty membership base. And that's to harmonize the domestic and international cabin class mapping designators. So the points that you earn on the fare buckets that you pay has to be more streamlined across the board rather than having very different scales of percentage of miles that you earn on different fare classes and so forth. And if you look at the domestic landscape, competition has been very keen and rivals are moving in quite rapidly, with Indigo holding quite a large market share. They're having an induction of 1 aircraft every 2 weeks. So that's how the challenge comes in for Air India, is that competition is getting stronger. And Air India will need to catch up if they want to reach that 30% domestic market share gap.
Mayur, I would just like to butt in here a bit. Campbell told us in the interview that Air India wants to be a truly global carrier in the leagues of Emirates and Singapore Airlines, which, in my perspective, says that if you want to be in those big guys' league, you have to look beyond to and fro India traffic and also launch destinations, say something like a London to New York or for a Singapore to Australia. Do you see Air India exploiting its trip freedom rights, which it has from their service agreements, and launching such destinations in future?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. And I've said this quite many times before, is that Delhi hub is geographically positioned in a very ideal from a geographical location perspective. So it can compete very much with Dubai because of where it's positioned, and it can actually challenge Singapore to an extent by crisscrossing east and west bound traffic. So you can get Southeast Asia into Delhi and then pushing that across to European sectors. So a bit like Emirates has been doing since it started its operations and becoming very aggressive network carrier. So there's a lot of room for growth for the international expansion to move forward once they get the right aircraft. And I think the key is getting wide-body aircraft into the fleet would be quite important for Air India to achieve that type of network connectivity through Delhi as a hub from India to the world.
Correct. So I'd like to ask you, Mayur, about a broader issue, which is also a slightly more complicated issue, actually. I'm talking about work culture, right? So in order to implement any of the broader turnaround plans that the Tatas have, there needs to be a huge cultural change in Air India, first of all. So now, yes, the Tatas are hiring a lot of experts from the aviation sector, from rival airlines, from their own group companies, and they are building a very formidable leadership team. But do you still think it'll be quite a challenge to bring these cultural changes into the airline, especially with respect to the integration of the four airlines that the Tatas currently run, which is Air India Express, Vistara, and AirAsia India?
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the integration work that bringing all the four brands under one group, and I think if you look at some of the work that Campbell Wilson has done in Scoot, which he was part of from its initial days, he actually established a culture that was unique, that was away from the parent company. So through that initiation, I think, first of all, you've got a leadership that understands what culture is. But I think it also needs to have a majority control of an ownership to ensure that all the brands come together in a unified way and create a distinctive culture away from the past, which has a lot of baggage. So I think, having said that, that sort of segues into what happens with Vistara and Air India, because that will be a major shift in how the culture will be formulated.
Right. So, Arindam, two-pronged sort of question to you to dip into your reportage and tell me what you hear. First of all, the cultural changes that have already happened in the 9 months that you hear, and of course, tying it in with plans of integrating the four airlines. What do you hear? What's happening?
So, Anirban, I don't think anybody predicated that it will be an easy challenge for the Tatas to change the culture at Air India. So, in January, the Tatas took over Air India and they have been on the job since then. By February, Suresh Dutt Tripathi, a veteran of Tata Steel, was parachuted to Air India and he took charge over there. He revamped the entire HR functions. In the beginning, there are even talks about modern corporate culture, innovation like townhouse with top management, where the employees could speak their mind with C-suite executives. I don't think that has been executed as of now. But what has happened is there's this hiring that you mentioned. A lot of talents from outside have come in, and it was necessary because for more than 2 decades now, the employees of Air India has been devoid of training in modern software or modern airline forecasting and network planning. But that has again led to a chasm in this culture issues, and I think that has to happen. Like, that is a journey every company goes through. As Campbell also mentioned us in the interview, that Air India wants to take every one of its employees on board in its future journey. There is this current chasm, but everyone in Air India is gradually realizing that there has to be a significant change in the style of working or functioning or the training or the reporting they have to do to be part of this new Air India or Air India 2.0.
Right. Let's certainly hope so. I'd like to ask you one last question. Mayur, we're talking about profitability. Do you give Air India 5 years or do you give it more?
I would say it's within 3 to 5 years. So the Air India turnaround project is long term, but there's a lot of legacy issues that needs to be cleared with consolidation of various brands. The shareholding needs to be put in place for the long-term viability of the airline. And it also needs to attract new passengers through new revenue management systems, new destination, and as I mentioned before, improved loyalty program, because that drives a lot of loyalty and repeat customers. This is a perfect opportunity to do those heavy investments and getting that fundamental right in order to secure its profitability moving forward.
So, Anirban, nobody knows it better than you that airline profitability depends. If it depends on one single internal factor that is under your control, there are 5 other external factors that can impact it. So, we don't know when the Russia-Ukraine war will get over or the fuel price will be under control. So there are multiple external factors which can impact profitability. But having said that, the airline has significantly worked on revamping its contracts, revamping its agreements with suppliers and vendors, and it has taken advantage of its parent firm. The Tata Group now not only has 1 or 2 airlines, it has 4 airline brands, and this strength, this scale that they're showing when they're going to negotiate, say with airports, say with fuel suppliers, or with vendors, suppliers, and banks. And I hear that as compared to last fiscal, fuel cost has come down by almost 6 to 7%. And that is not an insignificant number in today's circumstances. But the profitability, I don't think is the single priority of the group as of now. The group is looking to revamp the operations of Air India and make it an airline of choice for the customers, which would reflect in their top line. So we shouldn't be surprised if we see a change shifting in the goalpost or this 5-year profitability window that Air India has set up internally.
There you go. Nothing like a divergent note to end a news podcast on. From customer to costs, screens to sectors, planes to loyalty programs, the aviation to automobile conglomerate Tata Group is attacking every pain point that ails Air India. Some of it is going according to plan. Quite a bit, not so much. There's a lot of ideation, investment, implementation, and integration left still. In India, competition is always hot and always heating up. Outside, airlines are still reeling from COVID shocks, but they will be back soon. Will the Tatas take Air India back to its days of glory, competing neck and neck with the big boys of the global aviation space? Will the airline become profitable in 3 to 5 years, as Mayur estimates? Or will those targets keep shifting ahead, as Arindam projects? Let's wait and see. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by Sumit Pandey and sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee. Executive producers, Arijit Barman and Anupriya Bahadur. Do like, share and subscribe to The Morning Brief on your favorite streaming platforms. We drop episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. The Economic Times is coming up with more interesting podcasts. Do listen to The Business of Sports, our latest show on the economics and dynamics of the Indian sporting world. The first 2 episodes are up on all platforms for your listening pleasure. More interesting stuff is coming up. Watch this space and stay tuned. This is your host Anirban Chowdhury signing off. Have a great week ahead. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are in the description.